Hey, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hope you're having a blessed day today. Welcome to Pep Talk, the podcast. We give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help us, God, where we take these interesting and oftentimes complex and confusing health and wellness and medical topics. We break them down into small, digestible, understandable pieces, and then we give you action steps so that you can improve your health, the quality of health of your family, and just like many of the physicians who watch this program regularly, you can help improve the health of your patients and your community. Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Eric Deputy. I'm a practicing physician now for over 20 years in the field of functional medicine and functional neurology, helping people get to the root cause of their problems. I'm going to be taking you down an interesting journey today on something that we're seeing more of now today than we have in the years past, and that's neurodegenerative diseases, especially Alzheimer's. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the risk factors, some of the things that you can do to mitigate some of the chances of developing this horrible dysfunction. And I want to talk to you about some of the genetic predispositions and action steps that you can do that you're not going to hear about in too many other places to help yourself and your family improve the quality of your life and the function of your life. Listen, science is telling us now that we as human beings have the ability to live a longer life. We're going to be living a longer lifespan. They're saying 120, 130. Some people are even saying up to 200 years of life for humans to live. Well, I don't know about you, but I want to make sure that I'm not just living a long life, I'm thriving in that life, and that I've got good brain function, good organ function, good everything working like it's supposed to in and on and around my body, and including my mental faculties. Well, unfortunately, Alzheimer's is massively on the rise, and many people don't quite understand why. Now, I'm going to tell you, we don't have all the answers, but we got a lot of them. And I want to share with you today what some of those complicating factors are that contribute to this unfortunate disorder. Now, we do know this. We know that new research that's been published in neuroscience magazines is talking about Alzheimer's disease, and it reveals that the tau protein in the brain cells are increasing because of oxidative stress and what they call toxic lipids. Now, we know that there are many situations that can increase the risk of someone developing Alzheimer's. You could be exposed to a lot of heavy metal or environmental toxins at a young age. You could have a lot of head or neck traumas, whiplashes, concussions, traumatic brain injuries. These things build up over time. Toxicities, deficiencies, we could have that could contribute to this. There are genetic imbalances that contribute to Alzheimer's. I'm going to show you how you can test for that and lifestyle changes you can take for that. The brain-gut connection and dysfunction in the vagus nerve, as well as the gut microbiome, plays a huge role in this. And then obviously blood sugar. We know that there's type 1 diabetes, that's an autoimmune issue. We know there's type 2 diabetes, which is unfortunately a lifestyle dysfunction. And then there's type 3 diabetes, which is now known as early onset Alzheimer's. And we know that if we take a comprehensive approach to looking at this condition, that there are many, many things that can be done to help improve the quality of someone's life and even improve some of the dysfunction and the dis-ease that's caused to these individuals. Now, what we'll tell you, as far as medicine is concerned, there is no way to prevent disease. They don't even look at that. It's not in their repertoire. Right? It's like going to the plumber to try to have your baby delivered. It's not even, you're talking to the wrong person, right? And they also will tell you that there is no treatment. There is no cure. There's no therapeutics out there that have been proven without a shadow of a doubt to help with this. Now, there are medications on the market that neurologists and doctors are using to help with this disease, to manage the disease, but no one is looking at a cellular, a genetic, a microbiome, and an autonomic and central nervous system aspect as much as should be. And that's the root cause of these issues. So let's talk a little bit about the positive role of tau proteins in the brain. So your brain has certain cells that are important for maintaining cognitive health and development, especially of the mechanics of your brain. And if there are some imbalances in that, and we get accumulation of what's called amyloid beta plaquing, which is like scarring or protein folding in, causing dysfunction in the brain, then the brain can't work. And studies have been published in Alzheimer and dementia research that shows that there's a huge correlation between these amyloid beta plaques and glucose metabolism in the brain of Alzheimer's patients. So we know there's a massive sugar component to this. And listen, the average American is consuming 150 pounds of sugar per year. And a lot of them are saying, oh, I don't do that. I'm not eating spoonfuls of sugar, but it's in the bread you eat, the pastas you eat. It's in a lot of the juices that you drink. It's in the fruit snacks and sports drinks that you have. I mean, it's in a lot of the things that are supposedly healthy, like your cereals and your breakfast pastries and all the things that are in our standard American diet. These are very problematic for us. And listen, I need you to understand that the diseases that show up in your 60s, 70s, and 80s started forming in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. So what you do now is going to dictate the future of the expression of your health. And look, if we're convinced, and I am, that 100 is the new 30, I'm convinced of this, that if we don't start training, eating, and living and acting like a healthy individual now, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, maybe not impossible, but improbable, to reverse all of the damage that's been done by a poor lifestyle. So let me dig into this a little bit. I think it's very fascinating. There are genetic imbalances, and I want to talk about from a gene standpoint first. Because look, your genetics in your body are your blueprint. They tell your cells how to function and fire. They tell your body how to respond to certain stimuli and etc. And there's a genetic aspect in something called a single nucleotide polymorphism in neurodegenerative diseases, including Alzheimer's. Now, here's what we know. We know that there's a lot that we don't know. And we know that science is and should always be evolving, and science is, but healthcare often is not. And I need you to understand that when something comes to knowledge, the application of that knowledge in the healthcare system might take years to decades to get there. And it's not just because of the safety aspect. There's always that concern, especially when we're talking about drugs that have harmful side effects. But there's a whole process that has to go through, and it's more political science than it is, health science for individuals. So let's talk about the genes. Now, first of all, when we talk about SNPs, when I measure genes in my patients, and I measure the genes on almost every single patient that comes through the door in all of our practices. Why? Because I want to know the blueprint of you. And doesn't that just make sense? Understanding your blueprint or your user's manual of how you should eat and sleep and exercise and supplement. These are important things to know. Now, it's not the begin all and end all of all testing, but it certainly sure as hell is a damn good user's manual that everybody should have an opportunity to start with. So there are clean genes and there are dirty genes. That's what we refer to. Clean genes are genes that are working like they're supposed to. They're firing without any glitches. Everything's working in perfect, harmony. If you have dirty genes, those are genes that we refer to oftentimes as genes that are glitching. These genes aren't working like they're supposed to. If these genes aren't working like they're supposed to, then we're going to have problems downstream. Gene expression is going to be bad. The cell communication is going to be off. Organ dysfunction, organ system dysfunction, and ultimately organisms like us can develop symptoms and diseases. So let's talk about the most common, okay? Let's talk about the most common SNPs that are involved in human individuals that can lead to neurodegenerative issues, including Alzheimer's. So the first one is a gene called APOE4. APOE4 is an alpha protein E. Now, by the way, I use the BioLimitless Discovering DNA test kit. Why? Because it measures 800,000 different SNPs. It gives you an app that you can literally, has AI behind it, that we can, as practitioners, we can really dial in on what lifestyle changes you should be making to improve your health. And as an end consumer, you have access to this as well. So you know how to eat well, think well, sleep well, breathe well, so you can be well. Now, this is the most well-known genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's, right? The APOE4 genes. Now, we measure the APOEs in our profiles. You're at a higher risk of that. And it can increase the amyloid plaquing that I was just talking about if you have that gene. Now, just because you have that gene doesn't mean you're going to express that disease. I'm going to be really, really clear on that. The reality of it is that if you understand that you have that gene and take lifestyle mitigation action steps, that can truly change your expression and risk of that. Another gene is called a CLU gene, which is a clustering gene. This gene is linked to the formation of beta amyloid plaquing as well. The clustering plays a role in brain inflammation and immune response, which are both associated with Alzheimer's. All right, so that's a big one to know and understand. There's another gene called PICALM. This is a gene that deals with certain variants of proteins that deal with amyloid plaquing and cellular debris, which could also increase the risk of Alzheimer's and other neurological issues. There's another gene called CR1. That's CR1. That CR1 gene is a variation that are associated with immune responses and inflammation in the brain. Again, dealing with amyloid plaquing. And another one is the TREM2. This is a triggering receptor expression on myeloid cell 2 gene. If you have this mutation, it reduces the brain's ability to clear out, to filter out, or to detoxify, if you will, purify the brain of amyloid plaques and increases inflammation. Then you also have a gene that's an ACE gene. This is, if you have a ACE gene variant, it's associated with blood pressure issues. And then that can also have polymorphisms that indirectly influence Alzheimer's. And then any of the genes that are methylation genes like MTHFR, MTR, MTRR, VDR, etc., those genes also, because of the blood sugar correlation and the lack of methylation, can increase the risk as well of inflammation and autoimmune issues. Now, with MTHFR, which I've done other videos on, you should go back and watch those. You got to avoid gluten like it's the plague. You've got to have methylated B12, methylated B9, and then you really need to make sure that you're living the lifestyle based off of your genetics. Now, that being said, controlling your blood sugars is a massive, massive, massive component of this. If you allow your blood sugar levels to consistently stay high, and your insulin levels to stay high, this is going to increase your risk factor. That's why on a blood test, which you should have done at least twice a year, you should measure your A1C levels. The A1C needs to be down below a 6.0. We want to keep that A1C level down, and we want to keep your insulin level below a 3. If we can consistently do that, the data is clear that we can keep your risk down for developing neurodegenerative issues. Now, how do we do that? We eat a clean diet based off of our genetics. We use intermittent fasting, and sometimes we use prolonged fasting, and we eat clean, healthy foods void of the standard American diet. Very, very important to do those things. I want you to also understand that there's a increased risk of neurodegenerative issues, including Alzheimer's, when you have increases of seed oils in your system. Seed oils, grapeseed oil, sesame seed oils, just the oils that include linolenic acid that are in seed oils, destroy the gut health and causes leaky gut. Well, leaky gut causes leaky brain. If the toxins leak out of your intestinal tract, which is supposed to be enclosed, and the toxins are supposed to come out of your bowels whenever you have a bowel movement, if you have holes in your intestinal tract, that's going to get into the brain, and that can cause some serious issues as well. We know that the dangers of leaky gut causes endotoxemia. And endotoxemia, because of the intestinal permeability, causes massive amounts of antioxidants, including massive amounts of oxidative stress, including those seed oil stresses and toxins to get past the blood-brain barrier and cause some nasty issues. Not only that, but there could be pathogenic bacteria that are getting out of the intestinal tract because of the leaky gut. And I've done a lot of leaky gut workshops, so go on our site and check those out. But that pathogenic bacteria can cause some serious issues in the brain-gut connection and in the brain, leading to chronic low-grade inflammation, which can cause metabolic dysfunction and can cause accumulation of Alzheimer's disease. Many studies have shown this. Anytime that your mitochondria is dysfunctioning, if you're toxic with heavy metals, if you're toxic with plastics, if you're toxic with forever chemicals like PFASs, that can cause this issue. If you have issues where you've got problems with processing and digesting fats, carbs, and proteins because you're deficient in certain enzymes, which 90% of the population, at least especially in my experience over 20 years, has that deficiency of enzymes, that's going to be problematic. So what are things that we need to do? Here are some action steps. Write this down. Number one, avoid gluten and casein as much as possible. Casein is the pasteurized dairy. It's in a lot of pasteurized dairies. I'm not a big fan of pasteurized dairy at all. It literally is, if you're going to have dairy, it needs to be whole, organic, and ideally raw. And man, gluten is such a problem for so many people. At least 75% of the population has some type of genetic predisposition that causes them to be allergic or sensitive to gluten, which then, man, leads to serious problems with inflammation and all the things I discussed before. We also want to optimize our gut microbiome. We know that some 95% of the global population has dysbiosis or dysbacteriosis because of the standard American diet, because of stress, because of exposure to antibiotics and many other chemicals that cause this, including Roundup Ready, glyphosates, certain herbicides, larvicides, fungicides, and certain drugs cause leaky gut syndrome, which perpetuates serious problems. So having a probiotic supplement that has, what I like using is spore-based bacteria that can get past the stomach into the intestinal tract. I use formulas like the Master Microbiotic, eating fermented foods like kimchi, kombucha, sauerkraut, fermented vegetables. Very, very important that we get those bacteria in the stomach right so that we can heal that leaky gut, get the neurotransmitters like GABA and noradrenaline and dopamine produced for the brain to help our body do what it's supposed to do. Optimizing your vitamin D levels, getting out in the freaking sunshine without sunglasses on and without sunscreen at least 20 to 30 minutes a day is vital for your health. Vital. And by the way, a lot of you are causing a lot of your problems because of putting excess sunscreen on. And a lot of the sunscreen you use, it has a lot of toxins in it. You want to prevent sunburns? Stop eating seed oils. Seed oils are one of the things that contribute to sunburns more than anything. But having your gut bacteria balanced and having your vitamin D levels together are huge. Vitamin D, among the many things that it does, is it feeds the gut microbiome. So does vitamin C. That's why vitamin D and C are so good for so many reasons in the body, because it feeds the bacteria. We have hundreds of trillions of bacteria in and on our body that are responsible for our health. I mean, our genes are expressed by the health of the bacteria in and on our system. And we live in a world that is all about, germ-free and all these other things that we need to have these bugs and bacteria in our system. We want to keep our insulin levels below a 3 on a blood test. If our insulin levels spike, that's going to cause serious issues with cortisol and other types of hormones that can then have dysfunction in the brain, causing cellular and inflammatory brain inflammation. We want to eat a diet that have nutritionally dense foods, especially rich in folate. So vegetables are the best form, and avoiding folic acid. Avoiding folic acid. Folate good, folic acid bad. Methylated folate even better. That's a methylated B9 that I was talking about before. We want to try to avoid and eliminate heavy metals, mercury, aluminum, things like that. So we want to avoid it in our food supply. We don't want to put metal in our mouth. We don't want to put metal in our injections in our body. We want to minimize our exposure to that. There's a massive class action lawsuit happening with two of the biggest manufacturers of baby food right now, where they've allowed certain amounts, and they've literally said we allow certain amounts of heavy metals in baby food, which can lead to neurodegenerative issues and much more, because the EPA and the FDA says it's okay. Okay. We want to eat antioxidant-rich foods. Blueberries are amazing. I mean, I don't eat a lot of fruit. Blueberries are my go-to fruit, and it's amazing what these medication or these I always call them, that's the fruit medicine. It's amazing what it does for antioxidants. And then we want to avoid certain types of drugs like statins. I'm just telling you, there's a very big concern for taking statin drugs, things that block acetylcholine. We need acetylcholine in our body, and certain drugs that block acetylcholine are very problematic to our nervous system and increase our risk for Alzheimer's and dementia. These are antidepressant meds and certain medications that control incontinence, and certain narcotic pain relievers and opioids and statins. They do that, and if you are taking a statin, you better get on a CoQ10 or ubiquinol supplement to try to help offset the side effects of that deal. Now, a couple other tidbits. Prioritizing your sleep is a big one. Exercising regularly is a big one. Stimulating the vagus nerve. You can go to YouTube right now and look up vagus nerve exercises. We now offer certain electrical stimuli devices that we can put on the vagus nerve and carotids to stimulate that. Managing blood sugar, challenging your brain. There are brain activity exercises you can do. We have a lot of them that we recommend for our patients that you can literally do online and on your phone to keep your brain functioning like it's supposed to. And last but not least, balancing your hormones. So I just need you to understand that this is a multifactorial aspect. And you can't just go to one doctor and this doctor goes, here, take this drug for your Alzheimer's. We got to make sure that we're sleeping well, eating well, breathing well, taking the right supplements, getting the right microbiome. All those things are factors in helping your body prevent these types of problems. And then if it does show up, you've got to get really tight and serious to treat this. Because remember, the problems that start in your 60s, 70s, and 80s started in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. So I know this is a lot of information and it's definitely outside the box. You've probably heard before, but this is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You need to go do your own research. You need to understand that knowledge is power. You got to go back and rewatch this and share this with your friends and family. Make sure you go to our website. That's peptalk.world, peptalk.world. Like, share, subscribe, and make sure that you're sending us information. You want to learn more about certain things, topics that I'll cover, go to peptalk.world. I'm here to serve you. Know that knowledge is power, but wisdom is taking that knowledge and applying it to your life. So folks, until we meet again, I'm Dr. Eric Naputi. God bless you. God bless America, and God bless the world. Stay smart out there. I'll see you soon. Be well.